The Aswang, Philippines' ancient shape-shifting terror that walks among us. Welcome, seekers of ancient mysteries, to Tales Labyrinth, where forgotten legends come alive and history's darkest secrets emerge from shadow. Today, we venture into the heart of the ancient Philippines to confront a terror that has haunted generations. The Aswang, a shape-shifting nightmare that wears human skin by day and reveals its true monstrous nature when darkness falls. This is not merely a tale of monsters, but a profound warning about trust, deception, and the hidden dangers that lurk behind familiar faces. Stay with us until the end as we unravel this chilling legend that shaped an entire culture's understanding of evil. If you find value in preserving these ancient stories, please support Tales Labyrinth by subscribing and join us on this terrifying journey into Philippine folklore. First, the village under shadow. The village of Barangay Liway, nestled deep within ancient Philippine mountains, surrounded by dense jungle where morning mists clung to towering trees and birdsong filled the humid air. Generations of families had built their lives here, constructing traditional bamboo homes elevated on wooden stilts, with woven nipa palm roofs that rustled in tropical breezes. The community thrived on rice cultivation, their terraced paddies cascading down hillsides like emerald staircases, while fishermen cast nets into crystalline streams that wound through the valley below. Daily life followed rhythms established by ancestors, with men working fields under scorching sun while women gathered at communal wells, balancing clay pots on their heads as children played nearby. Elders sat in doorways, weaving intricate patterns into textiles, their weathered hands moving with practiced precision, sharing stories that preserved knowledge across generations. The village marketplace bustled with traders offering fish, fruits, and handcrafted goods, their voices creating a melodious chaos that defined community connection and prosperity. Yet beneath this pastoral tranquility lurked an unspoken dread that manifested in whispered warnings and protective rituals performed at sunset when darkness approached. Mothers hurried children indoors as shadows lengthened, securing doors with blessed ropes and hanging garlic and salt at every entrance as ancestral protection. The elders spoke in hushed tones of disappearances that occurred throughout history, villagers who vanished during moonless nights, leaving behind only blood-stained earth and families destroyed by grief and unanswered questions. The village elder, Lakan Bayani, bore the responsibility of preserving ancient knowledge and protecting his people from threats both earthly and supernatural in nature. His weathered face carried the weight of 70 seasons, eyes sharp as a hunting eagle's, constantly scanning for dangers that younger generations had begun to dismiss as superstition. He maintained the old ways with unwavering dedication, teaching protective prayers, identifying suspicious signs, and ensuring that no stranger entered Barangay Liway without thorough scrutiny and blessing. But even Lakan Bayani's vigilance could not prevent what approached on that fateful evening when storm clouds gathered and lightning split the darkening sky. The animals sensed it first, dogs howling with primal terror, chickens refusing to settle, water buffalo stamping nervously despite their keeper's attempts at calming reassurance. Something ancient and malevolent moved through the jungle toward their village, something that had perfected the art of deception across countless centuries, wearing innocence like a mask while harboring an insatiable hunger. Second, the stranger's arrival. She appeared at dusk on the 7th day of the dry season, emerging from jungle shadows like morning mist taking human form. Her name was Tala, or so she claimed, a young woman of extraordinary beauty with skin like polished mahogany and hair cascading past her waist in waves that caught fading sunlight. She wore simple clothing appropriate to a traveler, a woven skirt and embroidered blouse, carrying only a small basket of provisions that suggested a journey of considerable distance and hardship. Tala's story seemed plausible enough to gain initial sympathy from the naturally hospitable villagers who gathered at the settlement's entrance to assess this unexpected arrival. She explained that raiders had destroyed her coastal village, slaughtering her family and forcing survivors to flee into uncharted wilderness, where many perished from exposure and starvation. For weeks, she had wandered alone, surviving on wild fruits and stream water, following river paths that eventually led her to Barangay Liway's protective embrace. The village council convened immediately to debate whether allowing this stranger to remain aligned with ancestral wisdom or contradicted protective protocols established through bitter experience. Several younger villagers advocated for compassion, moved by Tala's apparent suffering and vulnerability, arguing that denying aid contradicted the community values that defined their collective identity. Others, particularly the elders who remembered previous tragedies, expressed profound unease despite being unable to articulate specific reasons for their instinctive suspicion and growing dread. Lakan Bayani observed Tala with piercing intensity, searching for telltale signs that ancient warnings had taught him to recognize in potential threats disguised as innocence. He noted how dogs refused to approach her despite normally greeting all visitors with enthusiastic curiosity, how her shadow seemed slightly wrong in the firelight's dance, how her eyes held a predatory gleam that vanished whenever others looked directly at her face. Yet these observations remained insufficient evidence to justify banishment without violating sacred hospitality laws. After lengthy deliberation, the council reached a compromise that satisfied both compassion and caution, allowing Tala temporary shelter in an isolated hut near the village edge. She would receive food and protection while her story underwent verification through messengers sent to coastal regions to confirm her tragic account and assess truthfulness. Tala accepted these conditions with gracious humility, bowing deeply to express gratitude. But Lakan Bayani noticed something unsettling. When she smiled, her teeth seemed slightly too sharp. Third, the night of revelation. Tala integrated into village life with remarkable ease, volunteering to help with daily tasks and earning trust through apparent kindness and tireless work ethic. She assisted women at the well, carried water for elderly families, and entertained children with songs from her supposed homeland that enchanted listeners with haunting melodies. Within days, the initial suspicions had largely evaporated, replaced by growing affection for this unfortunate refugee who seemed to embody resilience and grace despite tremendous suffering. Yet Lakan Bayani's unease only intensified as he observed subtle wrongness that others dismissed or failed to notice in their eagerness to accept Tala completely. He noted she never ate during daylight hours, despite claiming hunger, always finding excuses to defer meals until after sunset, when shadows concealed her actions. Her hut remained dark at night without the usual cooking fires, and she refused all invitations to join communal evening gatherings where villagers shared stories and strengthened bonds. The first disappearance occurred on the 9th night after Tala's arrival, when young Dalise, a girl of merely 12 seasons, failed to return from evening prayers. Her parents searched frantically through darkness. Calling her name until dawn revealed a scene of unspeakable horror at the jungle's edge near Tala's dwelling. Blood-stained earth marked where something had occurred, dragged marks leading into impenetrable forest depths, and scattered fragments of the child's clothing torn as if by inhuman strength and savagery. The village erupted into chaos and grief, with mothers clutching their children close while fathers armed themselves with spears and parangs, demanding immediate action. Lakan Bayani called an emergency council, finally voicing the suspicions he had harbored since Tala's mysterious arrival from the shadowed jungle. He explained the ancient warning signs, how Aswangs infiltrated communities by exploiting human compassion, studying potential victims before selecting the young and vulnerable for their nocturnal hunts. But confronting Tala proved impossible because she had vanished from her hut, leaving behind only an overwhelming stench of decay that had been masked previously. The dwelling's interior revealed the truth. Animal bones picked clean, strange symbols scratched into bamboo walls, and a sleeping mat soaked with substances that suggested monstrous biology. As night fell again, the village prepared for siege, gathering in the largest communal hall, surrounding themselves with protective barriers of salt, garlic, and blessed implements while praying. Fourth, the hunt and the horror. The creature that had called itself Tala abandoned all pretense of humanity once darkness claimed the sky and moonlight filtered through storm clouds gathering overhead. Villagers huddled together heard it first, a sound that began as human laughter but degraded into something that no earthly throat should produce, echoing through the jungle with malevolent promise. Then came the scratching at doors and walls, testing defenses with patient persistence that suggested ancient intelligence and hunting experience beyond human comprehension. Lakan Bayani led the defense, organizing warriors into protective formations while assigning others to maintain blessed fires that created barriers of light against the encroaching darkness. He instructed everyone to avoid looking directly into shadows where movement flickered at the edge of perception, warning that the Aswang's gaze could paralyze victims with supernatural fear. The elders chanted protective prayers passed down through countless generations, their voices rising in desperate harmony while children wept and clung to trembling mothers. The attack came with terrifying suddenness when the creature launched itself against the hall's southern wall with impact that shook the entire structure violently. Bamboo cracked under impossible force as something massive slammed repeatedly against barriers designed for human-scale threats rather than supernatural predation of this magnitude. Through gaps in the walls, villagers glimpsed their attacker's true form, a twisted amalgamation of woman and beast, limbs elongated beyond natural proportion, fingers ending in curved talons. Tala's beautiful face had transformed into a nightmare visage, with eyes glowing like burning coals and a mouth distended impossibly wide, revealing rows of serrated teeth designed for tearing flesh from bone. Her body moved with fluid grace that defied physics, climbing walls like a spider, her spine contorting at angles that would break human bones instantly. When warriors threw spears through openings, she dodged with supernatural speed, mocking them with words spoken in their own language but distorted by inhuman vocal anatomy. The siege continued through endless hours of darkness, with the Aswang testing every defense, seeking weakness with calculating patience that wore down human endurance and resolve. Several men attempted to escape, hoping to lead it away from their families, but their screams from the jungle confirmed their sacrifice, achieved nothing except feeding the creature's growing power. Dawn seemed impossible, distant, as the beast circled endlessly, promising that eventually hunger and exhaustion would deliver the villagers into its waiting claws and insatiable appetite. Fifth, the legacy of fear. Salvation arrived with first light when the Aswang released a shriek of rage and frustration, its power diminishing as sunrise approached, and natural laws reasserted dominance over supernatural evil. The creature retreated into jungle depths, leaving behind traumatized survivors and the grim task of recovering Dalisay's remains and the others who had fallen during the nightmarish siege. The village buried their dead with proper rituals, but the scars on survivor minds proved far deeper than any physical wounds could manifest. Lakan Bayani convened the surviving council members to document everything that had occurred, ensuring future generations would never forget the lessons purchased with innocent blood and suffering. They codified identification protocols for detecting Aswangs regardless of how perfect their human disguises appeared, creating a comprehensive system of tests involving religious symbols, animal behavior observation, and shadow analysis during different times of day. These procedures would become sacred law, followed without exception whenever strangers sought entry into the community. The village's relationship with outsiders transformed fundamentally after that terrible night, evolving from natural hospitality toward suspicious caution that prioritized survival over compassion. Newcomers faced rigorous screening processes, required to demonstrate their humanity through multiple trials before receiving even temporary shelter within protective boundaries. Some criticized this harshness, arguing it violated traditional values. But Lakan Bayani remained unmoved, declaring that protecting the innocent justified apparent cruelty when dealing with potential monsters disguised as victims. The legend of Tala spread throughout the Philippine Islands, carried by travelers and traders who shared the cautionary tale in distant villages facing similar threats. Mothers invoked her name when warning children against trusting strangers, regardless of their apparent kindness or desperate circumstances requiring aid. The story evolved through countless retellings, becoming embedded in cultural consciousness as a fundamental parable about deception's dangers and the tragic necessity of maintaining vigilant skepticism even when compassion urged otherwise. Barangay Liway eventually recovered physically from the attack, rebuilding damaged structures and resuming agricultural cycles that sustained their community's material existence and prosperity. But the psychological transformation proved permanent, fundamentally altering how they perceived reality and their place within a world where evil wore beautiful masks. They understood, finally, what their ancestors had tried to teach through generations of warnings, that some threats cannot be defeated through courage or strength alone, only through wisdom, preparation, and the willingness to recognize that not everything wearing human skin deserves human trust. The legend of the Aswang remains one of the Philippines' most enduring and culturally significant tales, teaching us that evil often arrives disguised as innocence, exploiting our noblest instincts for its darkest purposes. This ancient warning transcends mere folklore, representing universal human anxieties about trust, deception, and the thin line separating civilization from predatory chaos. The story of Barangay Liway reminds us that vigilance and wisdom, though sometimes appearing harsh, protect the vulnerable from threats that compassion alone cannot overcome. Thank you for joining Tales Labyrinth on this journey into Philippine folklore's darkest corners. If this exploration of ancient wisdom resonated with you, please honor these ancestral stories by subscribing to our channel, leaving your thoughts in the comments below, and sharing this video with fellow seekers of forgotten legends. Your support helps Tales Labyrinth preserve and present cultural heritage that might otherwise vanish into history's shadows. Until our next journey into the labyrinth, remember, not every friendly face deserves your trust, and the old warnings exist for reasons written in blood.